Perfect. So why are we here today? We're here to talk about how we ended up with managed services and why I endorse them, and more importantly, to crown a winner of managed services bingo. So all of you should have a bingo card and a pen in front of you, so feel free to play along. I only have a few prizes, so I'm going to, Scott as our MC will break all ties. So have some Simmons swag to give away. So free space, just kidding, but I hope you marked that on your cards, and I think we all know the rules, right? So who am I? I'm Keri. I went from St. Louis, left for about a decade, been back for a decade, and I'm glad to have 10 years under my belt in the St. Louis area. So Simmons Hanly Conroy, these are the folks that trust me to run their IT department. So when I started running IT for Simmons, we were Simmons, Browder, Gianaris, Angelitas, and Barnard. About 3 years ago, we became Simmons Hanly Conroy. So that was our move to the East Coast. So we now have offices everywhere from New York, Boston, LA, San Francisco, headquartered in Alton, Illinois. We've recovered over $5 billion in settlements for our clients. And we used to go to trial about once or twice a year. It was pretty stressful, not only for IT, for our attorneys, for the litigation support staff. Now we go to trial about 2 to 3 times a month. So if you can imagine what IT has turned into. So I just want to give you a little bit of background of our departments and what we do, and that'll kind of move into why we went with managed services. So our IT infrastructure, our hardware group, that was outsourced since the day I joined Simmons. When I joined, they were already outsourcing all of the networking. Security became an issue. We used to have one core business. Now we have 4. Everybody can't see everything, so we've talked a lot about system security today. That's not only for outside, that's internal as well. Our custom in-house app, we can run by the back of our hands. I have a very senior team. Everybody knows what they're doing. They've been doing it a long time. SharePoint, document management, was not our thing. Put document management in place prior to the first merger. All those specs, all that growth, everything, projection, next day, overnight, gone, right? I'm sure I'm not the first person to encounter this problem, right? So we started importing documents of the other firms. We moved everybody from 4 tenants to 1 tenant. Now we have SharePoint Online for some of that as well. We're using our intranets are now going to be in SharePoint Online in the cloud, even though our documents are still on-prem. We expanded our SharePoint team. Like most places, we have an admin, had a developer to put some workflows in place, project manager, and analyst support staff. What was killing us here was turnover in finding this group. I've pretty much had a 0% turnover in my IT staff with the exception of the SharePoint team. So we've had a lot of loss of knowledge. Does anyone else have this problem? You think you have things documented, you think you have good processes. After releases, people are showing you their documentation. New person comes in, nothing's working as things change. Documentation wasn't updated. So we have a critical system. We were using break fix, or what they call on-demand outsourcing. How many of us have a critical system break? You're making a call to a vendor to come in and help because you don't have that knowledge in-house. And maybe you have a contract in place, you have a bucket of support hours, but what happens when you don't have that contract in place? They may not be available today. I want them here today. You may have to wait 3 days. When you have that incident, yeah, you have a budget, but when you have, maybe we talked a lot about patching, you have a patch go bad and takes down your system. Was that incident in your budget? Not usually. So now you're paying, you got people to answer to, right, when we have things that aren't budgeted. Let's talk about system health. I happen to believe we have a great patching schedule on our servers. We have a tried and true practice, been doing it for years. But what happened when they started rolling SharePoint patches into OS patches? Anybody else have problems with this? We the only ones? SharePoint blew up because we didn't turn off all the services and an OS patch went out. So we started excluding SharePoint servers from that patching because our IT service provider did not vet SharePoint patches. They only did traditional Windows patching. What about the monitoring? Sure, they were monitoring the SharePoint servers, but only if the whole server went down. What if you had one site go down? Do you have that site level monitoring in SharePoint? We didn't. At the firm, we have no electronic disposal of documents at the time, right now. I'm working very hard with attorneys to see the importance of this. But what does that mean? It stays forever, the growth. I feel like I have this baggage. I refer to it as our 16 terabytes of baggage. that no matter what system I move to, which direction we go, I'm bringing along the baggage. We had 3 warehouses full of paper from before everything was digital. So last year, 2017, we had a goal. We want to move from 3 warehouses down to 1. Had a 5-year plan to get rid of the paper. So guess what? The good news is everyone loves the document management system. They decided to hire temps. We now are down to 1 warehouse, and that 5-year plan went to a 2-year plan. But again, that growth. So we are just growing faster than was even projected. Backups. We all have backups in place, right? We talk about disaster recovery. We talk about testing those backups. When things get busy, projects get moving, what's one thing that gets skipped? Sometimes testing. Yeah. I want to talk about budget. So we were able to reduce our SharePoint team on site. And when I say reduce, we actually did have people move to other areas of the business. So they're still with us. But my budget decreased. We now have support using CTP 24/7. I now have 1 SharePoint resource that's supporting folks from coast to coast. He's going to have a lot of burnout if he didn't have somebody else to help with that, right? I can't expect him to have his phone on 24/7, always be available. He has a life, and I want him to have a life. He has vacation, lots of it. I hope he uses it. So this is something that's changed the game for us. I want to talk about the flexibility. Working for attorneys, maintenance windows can be a nightmare. I no longer ask permission. I now tell them, this is when we're doing this upgrade, because if I don't, I'm going to be behind on everything. That being said, if we're in the middle of a trial, it's not going to happen. As I mentioned, I have another vendor that does our OS patching. Covenant has been great. We work around those schedules. We get everything, don't let each other step on each other's toes. You know, our cloud patches are easy. I wish everything was in the cloud, but it's not. I have a really large on-prem farm. That's where the patching is complicated. So I just want to share our story. So back in November, I had a new SharePoint admin. Had everything documented. We had a great project plan in place. Rolled up patches. Saturday night, about 11:30, my phone rings. Guess what? There's no documents available for search. They're all there, but no one can search them. So what good are they? They're as good as useless. Patches took down search. We did have a break-fix plan in place. So Corey was kind enough to actually answer his cell phone when I called him on Saturday night at about 11:30 and said, hey, guess what? We're down. Can you guys help me out? I know tomorrow's Sunday. This isn't going to go well if I walk in Monday morning and we have no documents. So what happens next? So the problem management here. Ticket open 11:30 p.m. on a Saturday. By midnight, Corey's team had a plan in place. Sunday morning, 7:29 a.m., I got my first update. So as you can see here, we had regular status updates. Everything was resolved. We were live before we all were back to work on Monday morning. I was now a believer. We needed to convert from just having a bucket of support hours to go full managed services. Somebody got bingo, perfect. So we have some Simmons swag here. Somebody was going to hand that out, but feel free. There's a phone charger. There's an iPad case. Take your pick. So what are the pros of managed services? Our business continuity. We are now testing disaster recovery more. We're being proactive rather than reactive to our SharePoint health. We kept pushing those servers to the side, patching 90% of our servers and leaving those few open, which is a huge risk, we all know. We now have escalations and 24/7 contacts. We have a single point of contact. Isn't it nice now to just have one mailbox that you can go to? In the past, when I would, and Covenant's been great about this, I would call my sales rep. I would call the technical resources that I knew. Anybody that I could get to answer an email or phone. Ron's heard from me many times. So now, though, it's great. We have a single point of contact. I know if I reach out, they're going to answer, and I'm going to have the nice regular status updates. Response times are based on severity. I'm traditionally not going to call someone if I have a few documents missing. But when I had 0 documents, needed it fixed even though it was Saturday night. In reflection, what I've learned for Simmons, we not only needed managed services for IT and hardware, this was the first time we put managed services in place at the application level. We can get ahead of our SharePoint health. Why didn't I do this a long time ago? Why did I have the bucket of support hours rather than managed services? In conclusion, now we are all bingo winners. Any questions?
On your document retention, what is the, being in a law firm, you say you have warehouses of paper and you have searchability and things like that. You're still a domestic entity, right?
Yeah, we are a national firm. So we are,
What
yes.
is your retention and your security around the document management piece of it?
So our retention is 10 years after a case is closed. The complex part of that is our main core piece of business, our first client that ever came to us, that case is still not closed. They kind of continue for a long time. Now, if you get into some of those other litigation areas where, like pharmaceuticals, yes, those cases, one defendant, close like a traditional case. Those we absolutely have a retention plan around. But our core business, 10 years after the case is closed, we still haven't closed the first case.
So do you set your retentions through your backup software when you do your scanning and things like that?
So basically, yeah, now when we're scanning in documents, we are putting, if we ever close a case, which happens in a few litigation areas, we will, when we mark that case closed is when the 7-year cycle starts. So it'll be 7 years from that date. So we mark this at the time of close.
How big's your IT staff?
My IT staff, there's 15 of us, and that's hardware and software. So I have 5 on the hardware side and 10 on the application side.
And what all does that include?
Yeah. So Scott knows, like, if it plugs into the wall, they think it's IT, and that's kind of, if the power goes out, I'm not kidding, they will call us. So that includes telephony, that includes all applications, off the shelf, built in-house. It really also includes workflow, so anything that they think is a process that could be improved, they're gonna pull in my staff because they think that's where the knowledge is. So sometimes it's not even technology. They're business solutions. So this is why we rely heavily on partners, Covenant being one of them, because we can't do, we are, of course. So it is, we definitely have a great staff. We talked a lot about culture earlier today. We work for a great firm, we have a lot of great benefits, but the culture is something that we find folks that are just willing to wear any hat that's needed that day. And works well for us. Any other questions? I know I'm standing between everyone in this room and happy hour, so.
How about a nice round of applause?
Thank you.